Hello, everyone. This is the Faithful Life Podcast. I'm Matt Jacobson of FaithfulMan.com.
And I'm Lisa Jacobson of Club31Women.com. We're so glad you're here with us.
At Faithful Life, we explore what it means to be a biblical Christian in today's world, in our marriage, parenting, church, and culture.
It's real, raw, and relevant.
So let's get started. Hello, everyone. Hope you had an awesome weekend. We had quite a weekend. For those of you who hadn't heard, Lisa got E. coli, so she was just down for the count, so sick. But she's climbing out now. She's doing better. And thank you for those of you who prayed. I know that many of you did. So she's getting better, but she's not 100% yet. So until I think probably Marriage Weekend Edition this Friday, she is going to be out. So unfortunately, it's just me tonight. And listen, instead of me just going solo again like I did on last Marriage Weekend Edition, which many of you enjoyed, and thank you for your feedback on that. Appreciate it. But what we thought we'd do, and I hope you don't mind, is we wanted to go ahead and rebroadcast one of our podcasts that was very popular. It was discussing the difference between discipline and training and just getting that clear in your mind as a parent. And so that's what the podcast is about today. I know you're going to enjoy it, and it was a while back, so many of you may have not even heard that one yet. But that's what we've got coming for you today, and I hope you understand, and we'll be back in full force, Marriage Weekend Edition. But here's the podcast. Hope you enjoy. Hey, welcome everyone to the Faithful Life Podcast today. We hope you're doing great.
Yes, hello everyone. Today we're going to be talking about parenting, and if you don't have kids yet or have kids, then no worries, because this information, this conversation that we're going to be having, it's still really helpful for people you know who do have children, or if you do have children someday.
Absolutely. And so specifically, we're going to be discussing the difference between discipline and training.
Wait, there's a difference?
There's a difference when it comes to effective parenting. And that's just it. We want our parenting to be effective. And so for that to be the case, we have to keep this distinction really clear and understand what we're doing. So we're going to be unpacking that today. Before we dive into that, just want to say once again, thank you for the reviews. And we're going to ask you, if you enjoy this podcast, would you please leave a 5-star review, something you enjoy? And if you would, take a moment and even write a written review, because those are super effective at letting other people understand how people are enjoying the podcast. Also super encouraging to us. So if you want to encourage us, we'd sure appreciate it. Leave a written review or give us that 5-star review if you enjoy the podcast. So we just want to say thanks in advance for all of that.
Okay, so about this parenting thing, as most of you know, Matt and I have 8 children. And when we started our parenting journey, so to speak, I just had this vision of these wonderful, obedient, cheerful children that were going to be all lined up. And it's okay if you're laughing, because I really did have this beautiful picture, which is fine.
Well, the postcard's awesome. It's just that feature-length movie
Yes,
that's a
was
little
more challenging than I thought. But and I knew what I wanted from our, what we wanted from our kids. The challenge I had was, how do I get from here to there? So I don't know why, but I was thinking about this today, and when our firstborn, Britton, who was about 2 at the time, and I remember we were living in Nashville, and we were standing in the dining room, and I gave him an instruction, and he just kind of gave me this look like, a 2-year-old look, and I repeated it, and he still didn't move, and then finally I was so frustrated, I said, "You better get running, buddy," which is a really good parenting technique.
Yeah, I think the tone is important.
So
it's like Fear Factor.
Exactly. Well, he started running all right. He started running around and around in circles around the dining room table. "I'm running, Mama. I'm running." Just so hard.
Awesome.
I couldn't even, he didn't even get in trouble because he just made me laugh, which was really good.
Kids are so literal. So that reminds me, when I was teaching Britton to throw and catch a ball,
you gotta love that firstborn, right?
Absolutely right. Yeah, he gets everything. Or
kid.
she. Yeah, right. Yeah. He's the guinea pig. But I was teaching Britton to throw and catch a ball. We had this rubber ball, just larger than a baseball, and just tossing it to him, teaching him. And I kept saying to him, "Britton, keep your eye on the ball." And he looked at me, thought about that, and then he walked over to the ball, leaned over, and put his right eyeball on the ball, keeping his eye on the ball. So
That's so funny.
Yeah, kids do pay attention, right? That's the good news and the bad news sometimes, I suppose. Every parent wants happy, obedient, wonderful children. Mm-hmm. But most parenting is about responding to behavior in the moment. All right?
Yeah.
That's most parenting, and that's discipline. Responding to the behavior in the moment, rather than teaching for future maturity. And that is the difference between discipline and training. They're not the same things. And if we don't take the time to train our children, the only thing we will ever be doing with them is disciplining them. The thing about training children, and if you focus on that training when they're young, the need for discipline diminishes drastically. It's actually a super encouraging part about this journey. And so we just really want to unpack and understand the difference between responding to behavior in the moment and training for future maturity.
Yeah, and if we want to be effective in our parenting, we have to make sure that our parenting is a priority in our hearts, so because life just treats parenting as just one priority among competing priorities.
No, totally.
Parenting is not a part-time gig, and I think that's more than ever we want to kind of think of it the way that's something we do over there and it fits in this certain slot, but really parenting is just full out, all on, focused.
Well, it's the full meal deal. I think a lot of times, like you're saying, we just take this business of parenting the kids as the add-on to life, this thing that we're doing in the midst of all of the other really important stuff we want to do. And the discipline and training of the children kind of just have to compete for time, really, in our hearts and our minds. So we have a question for you as a parent, and we want you to ask yourself this question today. Where is your heart as a parent, as the one who is discipling your children? See, have you ever really considered that? Parenting is discipleship. Parenting is education. All education is discipleship. So where is your heart relative to the issue of priority? Where is your heart relative to your children on this subject of discipling your children? Hey everyone, I just wanted to break away quickly to tell you about a new book from Revell Publishers. It's called Strong, Brave, Loved, and it's by best-selling author Holly Girth. Holly is that type of author that just pulls you in with her writing. Lisa tells me she just makes you feel like your best friend. And she's also got some real grit. She's this type of person that looks life in the face and just says, "You're not going to beat me," right? And she wants to impart that kind of heart, that kind of understanding, and that kind of vision into the life of women. What she's done is she's created 60 short devotionals to empower you to be the kind of woman that knows that kindness takes real courage, that knows that love is a real risk, but you're going to do it anyway. So if you're looking for some real encouragement, if you're looking for the kind of book from a warm, understanding friend who's going to fire you with passion and encouragement, go get a copy of Strong, Brave, and Loved by Holly Girth.
Yeah, I think when we think about parenting, we think about our children's hearts. We want to reach our children's hearts. We want to connect with their hearts. But really where it starts is our hearts.
Absolutely.
And I just think back to, this is like a confession time, but when I was pregnant with our first, and this whole motherhood thing was very new to me, and I had read a book because I want to know what is this going to actually take from me?
Yeah, motherhood was new to me then too.
So
just saying.
So in this book, it read like that newborns sleep, 19 to 22 hours a day or some crazy number. And I thought, I'll give 3-4 hours. And that leaves me with another, 21 hours to do what I wanted to do. That's literally was my mindset.
Absolutely. You got the whole day ahead of you.
Well, apparently Britain didn't read the same book because the kid did not sleep nearly the amount they said they was going to. And
Right.
and every time he woke up, needed to be changed, needed to be nursed, like all the things. Like
Yeah, it's an interruption to the priorities you had.
Yeah, it did. I know it's terrible to say, but
No, it's honest.
That's where I started.
Sure.
That was my perspective.
Absolutely.
Instead of the reverse.
Well, do you remember, I used to say, so here we are, we've got this little newborn coming. He hadn't even arrived yet. And we're laying in bed and boy, a few more weeks and we're going to have this child.
Yeah.
But do you remember?
Yeah, I know what you're going to say.
Yeah,
I have a
exactly.
feeling.
So I said to you, I just looked at you and said, okay, here's the thing. All right. Everybody just winds up catering to their children. I said, that is not happening in this household.
That's right.
All right.
That's right.
When this child comes, we didn't know if it was a boy or girl. We didn't find out. When this child comes, he or she is going to fit in to the life that we have. There is no reason at all that a newborn has to become the center of everything on planet Earth.
That's right. Okay.
Gonna
Just
fit
got to lay
in.
down the law there.
See, you know so much as a potential parent, right?
Oh.
So anyway, we started out with that perspective, never mind scheduling naps or anything. That if we had to go, we're going to go. If we're going to go to that party, we're going to go. And boy, the child began to punish us for that bad attitude we had.
So all that to say, we've learned a lot along those years, and really did change our focus, our priority, and even our approach. So it's a lot of those things that we're sharing with you today.
So relative to where your heart is as a parent, do you see parenting as the top priority that you have in a household of kids, or the house that you will have if you're going to have kids? Do you see parenting as a top priority, or just the add-on to your impossibly busy week? Got to get that right.
Yeah, because if we're just adding, those kids are just, like I said, one of many things that we're doing, then you can't be effective, and it takes time. It takes a lot of time, and not in a burdensome way, because it so pays off. If you want happy, cheerful, obedient children, you invest the time in them.
Well, if you look at children as a compromise to the life that you're intending to live, then it becomes a burden. It's this thing that's in the way of the life that you want, right? So we need to change our mindset that this isn't a burden and it's not this impediment to the life that I want, but this is the life that God gave me. I know in your own heart as a mom, it was when you made that transition of your heart priority and you stopped thinking in those old ways and changed your heart on the matter. No, this is the incredible responsibility that God has given me right now. It changed everything. Change your expectations in your heart. And then all of a sudden, what was an impediment, what was a burden, becomes this incredible responsibility and blessing that God's given you. It doesn't make it easier.
I was going to say, if you're a mom out there and you're in that deep season of little children and struggling with this, and what you hear, what Matt said about my changing, then I just want to encourage you that it was a slow dying to self. It was not I woke up one morning and go, okay, now I get it. It was a slow dying to myself. Well,
is there a reason that Jesus said, take up your cross daily, right? Yeah, because he knew that we would have to make a choice every day to walk in the Spirit, right? And so he didn't just say, hey, make a decision once and it's all smooth sailing from there. Take up your cross daily. That's part of this journey as well.
Well, I know for myself, I was certainly far more selfish than I realized. That didn't really, I think, become revealed to me so fully as when I became a mother and realized how much I want to control what I'm going to do, when I'm going to do it. And
well, you don't even think in those terms before the kids come along.
No.
I mean, you just make the decisions that you intend to make. You have the priorities you intend to have.
So when things interrupted me or stopped me or ruined my plans, it was a big disappointment.
Well, I think it's common, frankly, for parents to sometimes feel that children are in the way of the rich, full, meaningful life that they desire to pursue. And you're not even conscious of that. But then all of a sudden you have this tree growing in your living room called a newborn.
Yeah.
And we just have to come to the place where we recognize that mindset, that perspective, that is not a biblical perspective, right? We want to walk as biblical Christians. We've got to embrace the Lord's perspective found in the Word of God on this enterprise called being a parent.
And this shift in mindset, again, it wasn't overnight, it was slowly, but changing from children being an interruption, a hardship even, to these are little hearts, these are souls that I get the opportunity to disciple, to love, train, help bring them into adults. And then that was just mind-blowing to think I could have such an impact on these little people.
Yeah, absolutely. So I want everybody just to take a moment and just dig into this next thought, okay? Children are never in the way of what God is doing in the world. Now, they're in the way of what you and I intend to do. They're in the way of how you and I tend to live. Children are never in the way of what God is doing in the world. Children are what God is doing in the world. If you want to know what God's doing, look down in a cradle. That's what he's doing in the world.
That's right.
So we need to see our kids as the disciples that God has entrusted to us to nurture, to love, to train, and to mature into a relationship with him. Deuteronomy 6 is a great passage to review on this topic of the priority that God gives parents in the subject of raising the children to know and love him. So I have a challenge for you, all right? So tomorrow morning, When you get out of bed, this is going to make a big difference in your perspective on what you're doing as a parent with these kids. All right. So this is what you need to do when you get out of bed. You need to say, today I am discipling my kids. All right. So all of a sudden we've moved this enterprise of parenting out of the, hey, just one of the things we're doing in the life that we're pursuing. And now we're recognizing our incredible responsibility that God has entrusted to us for the input, the nurture, and the direction of that life, right? That's what discipleship is. Come, what did Jesus say? He went and gathered to himself disciples. He said, come, follow me, learn of me, right? See, this is the parent's role in the life of a child. Follow my example. Learn based on what I teach you with my words and with my manner of life, how I live. See, this is so critical. When we think of ourselves as those who are discipling our kids, it brings up the process into this new realm of incredible import, of incredible, frankly, intensity in terms of our focus and our perspective on what God is doing through us in the lives of our children.
And with that comes the opportunity to say no to other things. And I know this is out of step with culture. And what I'm going to say next is not a popular idea out there, but like there's just like, I don't know, the world feels like, oh, it's something terrible about saying like missing out or saying no to opportunities. And I would just challenge that thinking as not biblical thinking, that there is nothing wrong with saying no to opportunities. In fact, it can be a beautiful thing to say, you know what? No, I'm not in that season right now. I'm sorry. I can't do that. That's not a season I'm in right now. And I'm saying season because it is just a season. You're not saying I'm never going to attend a Bible study for the rest of my life. I'm never going to go out to coffee I'm not, that's not true.
Or even the big opportunities.
Even the big opportunities.
Big opportunities like going on a big expensive vacation somewhere. Not happening.
But many of those opportunities will be available at other times. And even more importantly, you just get this one opportunity to disciple, love, nurture, train these children's hearts.
Yeah, absolutely. And frankly, effective discipleship takes time. You can't just stuff it into this list of priorities and treat it with, the same percentage that you'd give soccer practice, okay? It takes time. Effective discipleship takes time. So embrace your primary role as parent, all right? You've got to embrace this in your heart as the primary role, this responsibility, this priority that God has placed on you. You change that perspective, and then all of these other things begin to fall in line. Now, we want to talk about, practically speaking, so we've kind of talked about the idea, the vision, the perspective behind what we're doing, and now we want to talk about the specifics of what we're doing. Practically speaking, how you disciple, how you train your kids, because this is massively impactful to the culture, to the future, and frankly, to the country you inhabit. We need a perspective that goes outside of our kitchen or our dining room or the garage or the lot that we live on. Right? This is about what God is doing in the world. And you are impacting the future of these children's lives and all of the lives that they'll intersect with.
Yeah, if you just look at that small snapshot today, the bowl of cereal that got spilled and the meltdown on your kitchen floor, then it just seems discouraging. It seems defeating. And yet, if you've got that bigger picture of what you're really doing, what this is all about, those are such small things, really. And those are things you can, easily overcome. It's just spilled milk,
Well, okay, so you're talking milk. I have to tell the goat milk story. This is so funny. But the thing is, right, you talk about spilt milk. There's a lot of spilt milk in parenting, all right? And I don't mean just the stuff on the kitchen table, but the mistakes. You make mistakes. You are going to do things wrong. And you're going to need to be humble. You're going to need to turn to your kids and apologize to them when you're wrong. Okay, so here's a time when I was wrong. And you know what?
That one time?
The one time. And I just feel like I need to share it.
Just get it out there.
No, it's so funny. Oh, we laugh. Even today. When we get together for Christmas, we tell the dead goat milk story. So, all right. So there was a season when we just drank goat milk. All right. And if goat milk is perfect, it's really great, okay? I think a lot of people that have had goat milk have had a variety of experiences between, something that tastes like it was scraped off the hide of the goat to something that's really good, right? There's a huge spectrum.
Don't be too honest in this.
There's a huge spectrum in goat milk. But we had really, really high quality goat milk. It was really great. And one of the things that we didn't do very often when the kids were young is get cereal. Not because we're against it. Yeah. It's just expensive, right? And you start, 8 kids, everybody wants a bowl and a half, 2 bowls or whatever. Yep. So we didn't do it very often, but it was a treat. So here we were, Honey Nut Cheerios.
Saturday morning,
got the bowls out, and I poured the bowls for you. I got the milk, and I poured it in the bowls, and all the kids are just sitting there. And Vienna did, I think, taste it a little bit.
Well, there were a few of our kids that were still kind of getting used to the idea of goat milk, so we were sort of in transition at that point.
Oh, okay. So I forgot about that.
Yeah. So that's why there's a little bit of
maybe a slight resistance, but we've never run a deli in our house. So what you're being served is what you're eating. And if you don't want to eat it for dinner, that's okay. You can have it for breakfast. So I just was determined that Lisa wasn't going to run a deli. So you're going to eat what we serve. All right. So all of a sudden I'm thinking the kids are just so happy we're having treat. And we'd done this to delight their hearts, right? We're giving them something fun and a treat. And they all just sat there. They had just sat there like, monks sitting around the table before just staring solemnly at what
Which is not typical of our dinner table.
No, a lot more like locusts. But anyway, so nobody's making a move. And I'm going, hey, kids, it's okay. We've prayed. Go ahead and dive in, And nobody makes a move. And what's wrong? Okay, so now I'm a little bit frustrated because, for heaven's sakes, we've given them this and they're not appreciating it, and that's wrong. And Vienna just looks up, and these kids, they're young. What, the oldest, Britton, was he 12?
He wouldn't even been 12 yet, yeah.
Okay, so
so maybe 10 and down.
12 down to very young, 3, 4. All just sitting there. And Vienna looks up and she goes, Dad, this tastes like dead goat's milk. I said, what? She said, yeah, dead goat's milk. This is dead goat's milk. And she's just this little, 6, 7-year-old?
Yeah.
I'm going, what are you talking about? Eat that. I want everyone. You guys start eating right now. Get those spoons and start eating. Because I'm not going to put up with this, picky attitude about it. And no, it's not good. And then Britton looks up. He says, Dad, it's not good. And I said, that's ridiculous. I'm in the kitchen, and I grab the jug of milk. I said, there is nothing wrong with it. I take the cap off. I turn that whole jug up into my mouth, and I threw up in the sink.
Oh, no.
I'm not kidding. It totally happened. And all the kids burst out laughing. Oh. So anyway, there is such a thing as dead goat milk. I don't know what they did. Maybe they took it to Saudi Arabia and said, let's set this in the sun for 3 weeks and then take it to the Jacobson household. I don't know what happened. There was something seriously bad with it. All right, that was the end of goat milk in our family right there. You make mistakes, and we had a good laugh about it. Right, exactly right. So I apologize. I'm so sorry, kids. This is terrible. There's something wrong here, and I don't know how they got the goat inside the milk jug, but they managed it somehow. Anyway, I don't think they cleaned his hooves before they did it either.
Okay, stop.
Anyway, it was so bad. But you make mistakes, and then you apologize, and then you move on. You're still the parent. All right, so let's get down to practically speaking, how this training business works. Now, again, parenting, massive subject. So we're not talking about everything today. The main thing is we want to cement in your minds the difference between discipline, responding to behavior in the moment, and training for future maturity. So training is something that looks like what, babe?
Well, I was just going to say, when people ask us, what are the top lessons you would teach, or when you're talking about parenting, just so you know, this is one of the biggest eye-openers, most impactful things I think we've had in our parenting experience. So it's easy to do. It's time-consuming in some ways, if you can look at it that way, but it's not hard, and it makes such a difference. So like Matt was saying, instead of responding to behaviors, you anticipate and you plan for and equip by training your children where you want them to go.
I love that word, equipping. That's exactly what this is. So
a small example would be you have your toddler who doesn't want to sit in her chair. And so she keeps getting down from her chair. So what I want her to do is I want her to learn to sit in her chair. Now, I don't want her to do it because it's convenient, although it is convenient. But my primary goal is for her to learn self-control, learning to be content in her chair, and to listening to me. So those are really my highest goals, right? So what I'll do is I'll have her sit in the chair for 1 minute.
Okay, so somebody's got Mr. Squirm or Miss Squirm.
Yep.
And you set them down and their rear end starts crawling off the chair the moment. So
So even if it could be 5 minutes, depends on where your child's at, but let's just say a couple minutes. I even set the timer, and when the timer goes off, the child's still in the chair, big celebration. Get out the frozen blueberries, the M&Ms, I don't care what you get. Just, or even just a clapping, this is it. Look at that. You sat in your chair. Good job. And then the next day you'll add another minute and so on and so forth. So you're consistent throughout the weeks usually, until your child is able, even a little one can sit there for 30 minutes, 45 minutes, depending on their age.
So one of the most critical principles when it comes to training a child, and in this case we're just talking about this, teaching a child to sit still for a bit in a chair. And a parent who has a squirmy child will look at another parent with a child who will sit there for 40 minutes. And they'll go, well, my child could never do that. But the fact of the matter is we have very active kids.
Yes, very.
And I wouldn't say just naturally compliant.
No.
All right. Very independent children. Everybody, okay, can we just say everybody who has a child thinks, oh, I've got a strong-willed child. Okay.
Okay.
You know what? In fact, this is the brilliance and genius behind James Dobson's book, The Strong-Willed Child. Because every parent on earth thinks they have a strong-willed child, okay? All right? They're called children. And some of them are particularly strong-willed. That's true. I'm not going to deny that. But the fact of the matter is everybody feels like that when you're trying to train your child to do something. But in this process of training, and this principle applies to 100% of everything that you're doing when you're training your child, you have to make your child a winner. Right? You have to orchestrate the circumstances so that the child is a winner. So that's why we're saying if you got the especially squirmy child, and that dude is not going to sit there for more than a minute and a half. Great. Show him the timer. Hey, we're going to turn the timer on, Johnny, and it's going to ding, all right? And when it dings, you can get down, right? But it's just a minute. So, Johnny's watching that timer because something's going on there. And even if he's very young, you can captivate their imagination with this thing. And when it goes off for that short period of time, a minute, boom, he is a winner. And like Lisa was saying, you celebrate in whatever means celebration in your house and tell him how awesome he is and what an obedient, wonderful young little boy he is. You're making him a winner. And tomorrow you're going to make him a winner with 2 minutes. And then it's going to be 2.5 or whatever increment is necessary to get him more and more accustomed to sitting in that chair. And you're going to make him a winner by doing that. And if you're consistent with this over the course of time, and again, we're not advocating in terms of the details, doing the same thing exactly the same way every time. Maybe one day you give him a glass of milk, the next day he gets a cookie that's, gluten-free and whatever else, sugar-free. And
okay.
I'm kidding. Anyway, all right. So you'd give him, you do whatever is good for you, blueberries, carrots, whatever makes him happy. All right. That's what you do. And you're making him a winner. And it's a super important, critical principle, whatever the training is that you're doing. Now, we're going to, at some point, do a podcast on multiple training techniques for various kinds of behaviors. So that's coming. But we're talking about the principles here. And we're talking about understanding those principles, and in the process of training, making your child a winner, figuring out how to make it incremental enough so that your child is a winner.
So a lot of what we've been talking about seems like it applies to toddlers and preschoolers, and it does, because there's so much training that needs to be done in those early years. But it's also true, the same principle applies to your older kids. So I was thinking of another example is I've told people I haven't cleaned our kitchen done the dishes in like 12 years. People go, what? But our kids do the dishes, all the meals, and how that got started was
we threaten not to feed them if they don't do the work.
But it was a very similar process where and we broke it down into pieces, and this child cleans off this counter, this child cleans off this counter, and it's all systemized. It all happened over time. And so that now, I don't mean to brag or anything, but after dinner, I remove myself. This was actually Matt's doing. I should tell that story sometime. Matt's the one instituted this. The kids all go into the kitchen and they work and they knock it out and they get it done. And it's something that they learned over time and learned those skills.
Well, it's the same thing. Our kids are capable of so much. And they just love responsibility. It's the same thing with the fireplace and the wood. We've lived in this house for a little over 14 years, and we have a wood-burning fireplace. And of course, it's the most inefficient thing on earth, but we just love the real fire in the living room. So every year in the fall, we get 4 cords of wood, and they're rounds. They come in rounds. And the boys go out there and chop the wood. They stack the wood, and they pack the fire incrementally through the winter into the house from the woodshed. They light the fire every morning. I literally don't, every once in a while, I just feel like playing with fire. So I'll start the fire in the morning, right? But literally the boys do this. And Britton started it. I can't remember how young he was but he was young when we started this. And then the other boys have taken this over. And it's one of those things where just giving your kids responsibility and letting them know that they're making a meaningful contribution.
I was going to say, tell them what motivated them other than fear and pain. I mean, what motivated them to do this?
I said, hey guys, what you're doing, where does mom like to sit? Oh, she likes the chair by the fire. Mm-hmm. Yeah, because she's a little cold-blooded. She likes that warm fire. And so you are keeping your mom warm. That's what you're doing. Mm-hmm. And so they literally see the very direct connection between their work and the blessing that they are to their mother. And so this is just, and by the way, I tell this story in a little more detail. If you want to go to the website, faithfulman.com, there is an article on the website called Teach Your Kids to Work Hard. Mm-hmm. I almost entitled it, Teach Your Kids to Work Like a Dog. But
I think I stopped you from that one.
But it's Teach Your Kids to Work Hard because they want to make a contribution. And they deserve the value and self-respect that comes from making a genuine contribution.
And if you're wondering, where do I begin? How would I even do this if this is even a new concept to you? And it really begins by sitting down and setting up the goal as a parent. Like what do I want this child to learn or to grow in? Because if the goal isn't clear in your mind, it's never going to be clear in your child's mind.
And you're talking about in terms of training, the specific thing that you're going to train for.
My goal is to have this toddler sit in her chair. My goal is to teach our 8-year-olds to clean the kitchen.
Yeah. So have a specific defined goal in your mind before you go into the process of training. Absolutely. Mm-hmm. Now, the thing is that we need to remember as parents, we need to remember as husband and wife, we need to remember all authority is derived authority. So we don't stand over our kids because we're dad and mom. We stand over our kids because we're dad and mom because God gave us this commission. He gave us this responsibility. All right? Mm-hmm. This comes from God, and He will hold us accountable for how we're parenting them. So when it comes to our children, there's a place we want to start, and it's not with what we want them to do and with our authority. We want our children to understand the mind of the Lord on the subject of their relationship with us. And so the very first place to take your child is to the 5th commandment. Now, certainly you should teach your children. Just memorize them together. In fact, even saying this reminds me, we probably could use a refresher course, all right? Because there have been a number of times over the years where we've gone back and said, okay, let's refresh our understanding and our memory of the 10 Commandments. Because the Bible talks about the 10 Commandments as our schoolmaster unto Christ, right? Because that's ultimately what we want our children to repent before the Lord and receive the gift that God gives and offers to every single person, His grace and the possibility of entering into relationship with Him. We want that for our kids, right? And so teach them the 10 Commandments, the schoolmaster unto Christ, but particularly in this matter of how they view us, how they see us, how they understand the relationship with us. The 5th commandment. What does the 5th commandment say? Honor
your father and your mother. And it's certainly one that I emphasize. And even I think I remind myself, that, okay, because God has put this in place, that you are to honor me. It's not for my convenience, not because I'm bigger than you or any of those other things. It's because God has set this up, that this is how it should be.
Right. And so we're not telling you to honor us. God is telling you to honor us. So if you want to walk pleasing God the Father, you will honor dad and mom in these things. Now, this is only appropriate in the context where dad and mom have a yielded heart to the Lord and recognize that they will be held accountable for how they have nurtured, how they have loved, how they have raised this beautiful little person to know and love the Lord, right? You know, you don't want to teach a child in the context of somebody who's abusing that right.
Yeah, it's not to lord
And
it
that
over them.
responsibility.
It's in a warm, nurturing environment.
Absolutely. So we said a while back that discipline is far less necessary when we've trained our children. And this is just simply so true. And kids love operating within the parameters of a defined and expectation.
Yeah.
They love that security. And so therefore, when they are trained, they will operate in the context of a defined expectation. And they're happier in it. And they're bumping into they're bumping up against your expectations less because they've been trained in proper behavior. They've been trained in how to contribute. And it's just awesome. So one of the things that we wanted to cover, it is something that is ubiquitous in the experience of us listening to parents talk about their kids, right? And it's this business of, oh, I don't know if Johnny understands what I'm asking him to do. Because we'll see this over and over again, where a child will be given a direct command, pick up the toy and put it in the box, or close the door, or come here, right? Very simple commands. And the child will look at the parent with this kind of vacant look, and the child's basically looking as if he's saying, I don't speak Swahili. I don't really understand what you're saying. So, and we've even had parents say, yeah, I just don't know if he understands what I'm saying. And I say, oh, so your son's a little slow. Oh no, he's brilliant. He's a genius. Okay. Well, how is it that this genius is so amazing in every other way except understanding what you have said? All right. So kids are smart. Your kids are so smart. And the fact of the matter is kids decode language long before they're capable of speaking it, right? So they do understand what you're saying, and you need to recognize that in your kids. They can obey, they can respond, they do understand. And kids will respond to the expectation that is placed upon them.
And that's true for little toddlers. It's also true for older kids.
Absolutely.
They're pretty good too sometimes at tuning you out or making it seem like they're not really getting what you're asking.
Right. Kids will absolutely live up to the expectations that are placed before them.
I think it's really important that you don't, if you're listening to this and you're going, okay, we have so much work to do. And I know that feeling. I remember that feeling. We were raising our kids. Had overwhelming moments where I thought, but don't be overwhelmed. Just sit down and with your spouse, if you're assuming you're married, and talk about what goal are we going to reach? What should we start with? And just pick one, maybe two at the most, things you want to work on.
Absolutely. And establish a day or the days in the week that you are going to set aside to focus on training. Establish the day, establish the time. We're going to do this on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. Frankly, we would encourage you to do it every day if you're working on something. But we're going to do it between the hours of 12 and 12:15, before or after lunch. Just you pick the time, whatever makes sense for you. But establish a time and establish the days that you're going to give to training. Because remember, training is not discipline. Discipline is responding to behavior in the moment. Training is training for future maturity.
And obviously responding is right in your face. So, it's hard to forget that because there it is and you're responding. But that training thing, you have to really have that mindset. I know personally, I set a reminder alarm at 10 o'clock every morning for weeks to remind myself to have sitting training, which was to just sit in that chair. Because if I didn't have that, I also would just get going with my day and forget to have done it. And so you train yourself and you train your child.
Absolutely. All right. And remember to make your child a winner. Create the circumstances so that your child can be a winner. And for some of you, that's going to be a really short increment. Others maybe a little longer. But think it through so you can celebrate a win with your child for obedience in this matter of training them to the behavior and to the yielded heart that you are desiring for them. And it's for their best, and it's for the order of your home. and you're going to be so successful at this. You really will be, and it's going to be awesome.
And you can see why, in Scripture it talks about to train up your child. And I think we all rattle that off pretty readily, but when you really emphasize that word on train, you think, okay, am I actually training this child?
Awesome. All right, so discipleship, that's what we're up to. So let's talk about today's takeaways for this discipling of our children. So number one, don't just respond in the moment. You have to do that. That's discipline. That has to happen. Train for future maturity.
And set clear goals. Figure out what it is that you want to shoot for and start working toward that.
All right, and then establish your time for training, the time that you've set aside each day. Establish that as a schedule and stick to it.
Pick one goal at a time, no more than two, so that you're not overwhelming your child or yourself.
And remember to make your child a winner, right? And this is all about honoring you as dad and mom, them yielding their hearts and walking as God calls them to walk, and you training them to know and to love that way. All right. Well, awesome. Thank you so much for spending the time with us today. Frankly, we've enjoyed this conversation. We really have. It's just been a reminder of so many of the things in our own walk with our kids. So anyway, we hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please leave that 5-star review. It's super meaningful and super helpful. And for those of you who are inclined and will take the time, please leave a written review. It's a huge blessing to us when you do that. We really appreciate it, and we read every one.
Yeah, thank you so much for those written reviews. We read them out loud to each other. It's a personal encouragement. It really is.
It really is. Well, listen, thanks so much for joining us today.
Remember, our God is our rock and our Redeemer.
He already knows what your week holds. He knows what you are facing.
He loves you and is for you.
So draw near to God, and He will draw near to you.